नमस्ते गाइस, बोलिए सत्य सनातन वैदिक धर्म की जय। क्या हाल चाल आप सबके, कैसा गया आपका वीकेंड? मेरा बहुत ज़बरदस्त गया। आई डिड माई लाइव, और लाइव हुआ हमारा इस बार भगवत गीता के ऊपर। आई होप इट वॉज अ बिग लाइव। आई होप आपको पसंद आया होगा तो ज़रूर बताइएगा। और आज हम वेदांता फिलॉसफी जो कई देश से डिले चल रही है वो हम स्टार्ट करेंगे। कहाँ से डिले चल रही है हम वहीं से पकड़ते हैं। आत्मन जीव ईश्वरा एक जीववादा एंड दृष्टि सृष्टिवादा, ये सारे कंसेप्ट्स आज हम पढ़ेंगे। वी हैव मेनी टाइम्स स्पोकन ऑफ ट्रुथ और रियलिटी एज सेल्फ ल्यूमिनस, स्वयं प्रकाश। हमने कई बार जो ट्रुथ उसको, रियलिटी को सेल्फ प्रकाश, सेल्फ ल्यूमिनस बताया गया। जैसे हम आत्मन की भी डेफिनेशन देते हैं, आत्मन की भी डेफिनेशन में हम इसे सेल्फ प्रकाश बोलते हैं। But what does this mean? Vedanta defines it as that which is never the object of a knowing act but is yet immediate and direct with us. यानी कि which is never the object of knowing act, यानी कि it is not an object of knowing act but is yet immediate and direct with us, यानी कि immediately और direct हमें उसका ज्ञान होता है। अवेद्यत्व सति अपरोक्षस्वय वहारयो ज्ञात्वम। Self luminosity thus means the capacity of being ever present in all our acts. Self luminosity की कैपेसिटी ये भी है कि वो हमारे साथ in all our acts of consciousness without in any way being an object of consciousness. मतलब कि वो हमारे साथ हर एक्ट में रहेगी बजाय इसके कि हमें उसके लिए कॉन्शियस होना पड़े, राइट? Whenever anything is described as an object of consciousness, its character as constituting its knowability is a quality which may or may not be present in it, or may be present at one time and absent at another. Maybe it is present at one time and absent in another. It makes it dependent on some other such entity which can produce it or manifest it, right? It makes it dependent on some other such entity which can produce it or manifest it, यानी कि या तो produce कर सकती है या manifest कर सकती है। Pure conscious differs from all its objects in this that it is never dependent on anything else for its manifestation but manifests all other objects such as the jug, the cloth, etc. ये हमने कल के भगवत गीता के श्लोक्स में पढ़ा था। वे वी आर स्टार्टिंग विद 4th चैप्टर 7th and 8th वर्स में भी इफ वी आर वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट आस्तिक दर्शनास में भी यही कहा गया था कि जो प्योर कॉन्शियसनेस, जो भगवान है, जो आत्मन है, वो डिफर ऑब्जेक्ट्स इसलिए करता है कि इट हैज़ नथिंग टू डिपेंड ऑन द ऑब्जेक्ट्स, बट वो अपने आप को हर एक ऑब्जेक्ट की तरह मैनिफेस्ट कर सकता है, जैसे जग और क्लॉथ एट्सेट्रा. Its consciousness should require another consciousness to manifest it. Then that might again require another, and then that another, and so on ad infinitum anavastha. Right? If consciousness should require another consciousness to manifest it, then that might again require another, and that might again require another. ये इस केस में बोला गया है कि अगर हमें मैनिफेस्टेशन को जानने के लिए एक कॉन्शियसनेस, वी आर सीइंग ए कॉन्शियसनेस, तो उसको जानने के लिए भी कॉन्शियसनेस चाहिए, और जो अगेन अगर कोई मैनिफेस्टेशन, देयर इज अ डिफरेंट मैनिफेस्टेशन, उसको भी जानने के लिए अनदर कॉन्शियसनेस चाहिए. इसे हम एड इन्फिनिटम कहेंगे, यानी कि ये जो साइकिल है वो चलता रहेगा. If consciousness did not manifest itself at the time of the object manifestation, then even on seeing or knowing a thing, one might doubt if he had seen it or not. अगर मैनिफेस्टेशंस को आप नहीं जान पाते हो, तो अगर कोई भी मैनिफेस्टेशन होगा, अगर कोई भी न्यू मैनिफेस्टेशन होगा, तो उसकी नॉलेज के लिए आपको हमेशा डाउट रहेगा कि इज द हैव यू सीन दैट और नॉट। जैसे कई बार आप देखते होंगे, यू आर एब्सेंट माइंडेड रहते हुए भी आपने आगे कोई ऑब्जेक्ट देखा, एंड यू नो आपने वो ऑब्जेक्ट देखा, या फिर इसे मोर इजियर टर्म्स में कह लेते, कई बार आप जैसे दरवाज़ा लॉक करके जाते हो अपने घर का, नीचे जाते आपको ध्यान आता है यार दरवाज़ा लॉक किया या नहीं किया, किया कि नहीं, मतलब यू आर अगेन थिंकिंग, इन द एंड यू विल व्हाट यू कैन डू इज यू कैन गो बैक to your home, you see whether you have locked the door or not, and then you are sure whether you have locked it or not, और lock किया ही होता है maximum times पे, right? It is thus to be admitted that consciousness, anubhuti, manifests itself and thereby maintains the appearance of all our worlds. This goes directly against the Gyatata theory of Kumarila, that consciousness was not immediate but was only inferable from the manifesting quality Gyatata of objects when they are known in consciousness. Now Vedanta says that this self-luminous pure consciousness is the same as the self, for it is only self which is not the object of any knowledge and is yet immediate and ever present in consciousness. No one doubt about his own self, because it is of itself manifested along with all states of knowledge. The self itself is the revealer of all objects of knowledge, but is never itself the object of knowledge. For what appears as the perceiving of self as object of knowledge is but association comprehended under the term ahankara, ego. The real self is identical with the pure manifesting unity of all consciousness. जो हमारा रियल सेल्फ है, दैट इज ऑलवेज आइडेंटिकल टू द ईगो, टू द अदर सेंसेस, क्योंकि इट इज़ जस्ट लाइक ए ट्रांसपेरेंट ग्लास। जैसे हम ट्रांसपेरेंट ग्लास को देखते हैं वैसे ही वो अपने आप को परसीव करवाता है, राइट। The real self is identical with the pure manifesting unity of all consciousness. This real self, called the Atman, is not the same as the Jiva or the individual soul, which passes through the diverse experiences of worldly life. Ishvara also must be distinguished from this highest Atman or Brahman, right? Ishvara must also be distinguished from this highest Atman or Brahman. We have already seen that many Vedantists draw a distinction between Maya and Avidya. माया एंड अविद्या, माया एंड अविद्या का हमने देखा था, माया जो सब कुछ खेल रच रही है। अविद्या क्या है कि आप उसी माया के अंदर, अगर जैसे आपको कॉन्च का एक पार्ट सिल्वर या चांदी की तरह दिखता है, दैट इज अविद्या। जब आप आगे जाके देखते हैं तो वो कॉन्च दिखता है, सिल्वर नहीं दिखता। अविद्या क्यों? क्योंकि आपको देखना चाहिए कि आज के ज़माने में अगर चांदी ज़मीन पर पड़ी होगी तो कोई उठा के नहीं ले जाएगा, पहले आप ही के लिए थोड़ी वेट कर रही होगी, राइट। The real self, called the Atman, is not the same as the Jiva or the individual soul, which passes through the diverse experiences of worldly life. Ishvara also must be distinguished from this highest Atman or Brahman. We have already seen that many Vedantists draw a distinction between Maya and Avidya. Maya is that aspect of Ajnana by which only the best attributes are projected, whereas avidya is that aspect by which impure qualities are projected. In the former aspect, the functions are more of a creative, generative vikshepa type, whereas in the latter wheeling avarana characteristics are most prominent. The relation of the chitta or pure intelligence, the highest self, with Maya and avidya, also called ajnana, was believed respectively to explain the phenomenal Ishvara and the phenomenal Jiva or individual. This relation is conceived in two ways, namely as Upadhi and Pratibimba and Avacheda. The conception of Pratibimba or reflection is like the reflection of the sun in water, where the image, though it has the same brilliance as the sun, yet undergoes the effect of the impurity and movements of the water. The sun remains ever the same in its purity, untouched by the impurities from which the image sun differs. The sun may be the same, but it may be reflected in different kinds of water and yield different kinds of images, possessing different characteristics and yield different kinds of images, possessing different characteristics and changes, with which, though unreal yet phenomenally, have all the appearance of reality. The other conception of the relation is that when we speak of Akash space in the jug or the Akasha in the room, the Akasha in reality does not suffer any modification in being with the jug or within the room. In reality, it is all pervasive and is neither limited, avachina, within the jug or the room, but is yet conceived as being limited to the jug or by the room. So long as the jug remains, the Akasha limited within it will remain as separate from the Akasha limited within the room. ये आकाश जो इसे बोला गया वो स्पेस को लेके बोला गया, जैसे हम हमारी जो आइज़ परसीव करती हैं वो फ्री स्पेस को परसीव करती हैं. यानी कि अगर जैसे मैं ये देख रहा हूँ तो मेरे को मोबाइल के पीछे क्या है या इस पूरे सेटअप के पीछे क्या है ये नहीं दिख रहा है, क्योंकि आकाश के थ्रू ही मेरी रेस जा रही है, मेरी आई साइट की रेस जा रही है. तो जो आगे चीज़ है वही मैं देख पा रहा हूँ, उसके ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन के पीछे मैं नहीं देख पा रहा हूँ. राइट, ऐसा नहीं दिख नहीं सकता, दिख सकता है थ्रू एक्स रेज एंड वेरियस अल्ट्रावायलेट थिंग्स, जैसे हीट सेंसर्स हो गए, बट आवर आइज आर लिमिटेड टू दैट. Of the Vedantists who accept the reflection analogy, the followers of Narsimha think that when the pure chit is reflected in the Maya, Ishwar is phenomenally produced, and when in the avidya, the individual or jiva, sarvagyatma, however, does not distinguish between the Maya and the avidya, and thinks that when the chit is reflected in the avidya in its total aspect as cause, we get Ishvara, and when reflected in the antakaran, a product of the avidya, we have jiva or individual soul. Jiva or individual means means the self in association with the ego and other personal experiences. That is phenomenal self which feels, suffers and is affected by world experiences. The jiva is also three stages are distinguished. Also the three stages are distinguished. Thus when during the deep sleep the antakaran is submerged, the self perceives merely the jnana, and the jiva in this state is called pragya or anandamaya. In the dream the state, the self is in association with subtle body and is called tejasa. In the awakened state, the self is as associated with a subtle and gross body is called Vishwa. Jiva also three stages are distinguished. ये three stages हैं, ये ध्यान रखिएगा. Thus when during the deep sleep the antakaran is submerged. Deep sleep में जो आपका अंतःकरण है वो submerge हो जाता है. आप meditate नहीं कर रहे हो, आप deep sleep में हो, right? The self perceives merely the ज्ञान. सेल्फ जो है आपका वो सिर्फ अज्ञान को परसीव कर पा रहा है, यानी कि मुझे पता ही नहीं चला कि पूरी रात क्या हुआ, इतनी गहरी नींद आई, पता ही नहीं चला कि क्या हुआ, दैट इज़ अज्ञान. आप थे लेकिन अगेन वाइल यू वर स्लीपिंग आपको ये लगता है कि मुझे पता ही नहीं चला कि मेरे साथ क्या हुआ, मतलब कि मुझे पता ही नहीं चला कि पूरी रात में कैसे बीत गई, मुझे पता ही नहीं चला, इतनी शांति थी कि नींद इतनी लंबी आ गई. राइट, दैट इज अज्ञान. एंड द जीव इन द स्टेट ऑफ इज कॉल्ड प्रज्ञा और आनंदमय. जीव जो हम हैं दैट इज एन आनंदमय स्टेट, क्योंकि वी आर रिलैक्सिंग एंड वी आर गिविंग आवर बॉडी द पावर और फ्यूल टू रन द नेक्स्ट डे. राइट, इन द ड्रीम स्टेट द सेल्फ इज एसोसिएटेड विद सटल बॉडी. जब ड्रीम आता है देन यू आर एसोसिएटेड विद सटल बॉडी, क्योंकि आपके कई बार आप हिलते हो, कई बार आपको वो दर्द तो महसूस होता है लेकिन वो दर्द फील नहीं होता है. आप भाग रहे हो, थक रहे हो, आप जो भी काम कर रहे हो इन ड्रीम में डर महसूस हो रहा है, then you are in connection with subtle body and is called tejas, right? In the awakened state, the self is associated with the subtle and gross body, यानी कि आप विश्व आप इससे याद रख सकते हैं कि जब आप awakened state में होते हैं, then you are in the world, then you are in the worldly state, तब आप world से connected हैं, world से ही आप associated हैं, right? In the awakened state, the self is self as associated with the subtle and the gross body is called Vishwa. So also the self in its pure state is called Brahman. When associated with Maya, it is called Ishvara. When associated with the fine subtle elements of matter as controlling them, it is called Hiranyagarbha. When associated with the fine subtle elements of matter as controlling them is called Hiranyagarbha. यानी कि आपके कुछ एलिमेंट्स आपको, जब डिज़ायर की हमने बात की थी भगवद गीता में, तो जब डिज़ायर्स आपको चलती हैं तो हिरण्यगर्भा, व्हेन विद द ग्रॉस एलिमेंट्स एज द रूलर और कंट्रोलर ऑफ देम, इट इज़ कॉल्ड विराट पुरुषा. जब एलिमेंट्स व्हेन द ग्रॉस एलिमेंट्स एज द रूलर और कंट्रोलर ऑफ देम, जब एलिमेंट्स, बाहर के एलिमेंट्स उस चीज़ को कंट्रोल करने लग जाते हैं, दैट इज़ विराट पुरुषा. The jiva in itself as limited by its avidya is often spoken as paramarthika, real. Jiva in itself as limited by its avidya, it is limited by its avidya, is often spoken as paramarthika, real, when manifested through the sense and the ego in the waking state of vyavharika, phenomenal, and when the dream state as dream self prabhashika, illusory. Prakashatma, as his followers, think that since ajnana is one, there cannot be two separate reflections such as Jiva and Ishvara. Prakashatma and his followers think that since ajnana is one, there cannot be two separate reflections such as Jiva and Ishvara. But it is better to admit that Jiva is the image of Ishvara in the jnana. The totality of Brahmachitta in association with Maya is Ishvara. The totality of Brahmachit in association with Maya is Ishvara. Brahmachit वही हमारी आत्मा और जो संसार की नेचर है, that is Ishvara. And this, when again reflected through Jnana, gives us the Jiva. यानी कि जब हमें दोबारा ज्ञान हो जाता है कि जो भी है हमारा शरीर कर रहा है, जो भी है हम ही कर रहे हैं, तो then that is again Jiva. The manifestation of Jiva is in the Antakarna as the state of knowledge. The Jiva thus in reality is Ishvara, and apart from Jiva and Ishvara there is no other separate existence of Brahma Chaitanya. Jiva, being the image of Ishvara, is thus dependent on him. But when the limitation of Jiva are removed by right knowledge, the Jiva is the same. Brahman it always was. Those who prefer to conceive the relation as being of the avacheda type hold that reflection, pratibimb, is only possible of things which have color, and therefore Jiva is chit, limited, avachinna, by the antakarn mind. Ishvara is that which is beyond it. The diversity of antakarnas account for the diversity of the jivas. जितने आपके अंतःकरण है उतना ही डाइवर्सिटी आप जीवों की है. It is easy, however, to see that these discussions are not of much fruit from the point of view of philosophy in determining or comprehending the relation of Ishvara and Jiva. In the Vedanta system, Ishvara has but little importance, for he is but a phenomenal being. He may be better, purer, and much more powerful than we, but he is as much phenomenal as any of us. The highest truth is the self, the reality, the Brahman, and both Jiva and Ishvara are but illusory imposition on it. Some Vedantas hold that there is but one Jiva and one body, and that all the world as well as all the Jivas in it are merely his imaginings. These dream jivas and the dream world will continue so long as the super jiva continues to undergo his experiences. The world appearance and all of us imaginary individuals run our course, and salvation is a much imaginary salvation, as our world experience is an imaginary experience of the imaginary jivas. The cosmic jiva is alone the awakened jiva, and all the rest are but his imaginings. This is known as the doctrine of ek jiva, one soul. इसमें सारी चीज़ें एज ए ड्रीम बताई गई हैं, इसमें सारी चीज़ें एज ए ट्रांजिटरी बताई गई हैं कि एक जीवा है, सारे ही उसके ड्रीम्स हैं, राइट। लाइक वी आर टू, हम अपने ही ड्रीम में वी आर परफॉर्मिंग सम वर्क, वी आर डूइंग एंड देन वी आर लिविंग। जितने हमारे अंतःकरण है उतने ही हमारे जीव के टाइप्स हैं, राइट। तो ये जो डॉक्ट्रिन है इसे एक जीव, वन सोल बोला जाता है। डॉक्ट्रिन्स के बारे में सवाल बहुत पूछते हैं, बट एक जीवा आई डोंट रिमेंबर पहले कभी सवाल आया है। The opposite of this doctrine is the theory held by some Vedantists that there are many individuals and the world appearance has no permanent illusion for all people, but each person creates for himself his own illusion, and there is no objective datum which forms the common ground for the illusory perception of all people. Just as when 10 persons see in the darkness a rope and having the illusion of the snake, they run away and agree in their individual perception that they have all seen the same snake, though each really had his own illusion and there was no snake at all. According to this view, the illusory perception of each happens for him subjectively and has no corresponding objective phenomena as its ground. This must be distinguished from the normal Vedanta view, which holds that objectively phenomena are also happening, but that these are illusory only in the sense that they will not last permanently and have thus only a temporary and relative existence in comparison with the truth or reality, which is ever the same constant and unchangeable entity in all our perceptions and in all world appearance. According to the other view, phenomena are not objectively existent but are only subjectively imagined, so that the jug I see had no existence before I happened to have perception that there was the jug. As soon as the jug illusion occurred to me, I said that there was the jug, but it did not exist before. As soon as I had the perception that there was the illusion and there was no other reality apart from the illusion, it is therefore called the theory of Dishti Shishtivada. That is, the theory that the subjective perception is the creating of the object and that there are no other objective phenomena apart from subjective perceptions. In the normal Vedanta view, however, the objects of the world are existent as phenomena by the sense contact with which the subjective perceptions are created. The objective phenomena in themselves are of course but modifications of ajnana, but still these phenomena of the ajnana are there as the common ground for the experience of all. This therefore has an objective epistemology where the Drishti Shishtivada has no proper epistemology, for the experiences of each person are determined by his own subjective avidya and previous impressions as modifications of the avidya. Drishti Shishtivada theory approaches nearest to the Vijnanavada Buddhism, only with this difference that with Buddhism does not admit of any permanent being. Vedanta admits the Brahman, the permanent unchangeable reality, as the only truth, whereas the illusory and momentary perceptions are but impositions on it. एक बार दोबारा से दृष्टि सृष्टिवादा को मैं एक्सप्लेन कर देता हूँ। दृष्टि सृष्टिवादा का मतलब ये है कि आपको लगता है कि जग था वहाँ पे, मतलब कि वही जो मैंने लॉक वाला एग्जांपल बताया था कि आपको लगता है कि शायद आप लॉक लगाना भूल गए, लेकिन जब आप वापस जाते हो और देखते हो तो लॉक लगा होता है। तो यानी कि वो चीज़ एग्जिस्ट नहीं कर रही थी कि लॉक नहीं लगा हुआ, लॉक लगा हुआ था, बट आपको ये लग रहा था कि शायद आप भूल गए, तो इस कंसेप्ट को दृष्टि सृष्टिवादा बोला जाता है। बुद्धिज्म इसमें नहीं मानते। द दृष्टि सृष्टिवादा थ्योरी अप्रोचेस नियरेस्ट टू द विज्ञानवादा बुद्धिज्म, only with the difference that while Buddhism does not admit of any permanent being, इसमें परमानेंट बीइंग को एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते। हमारे में परमानेंट बीइंग है जो जिसको ये बलेखा हो रहा है, हमें बलेखा हो रहा है, हम सारी चीज़ों को चेंज होते हुए देख रहे हैं, हम भूलते हुए को देख रहे हैं, हम ये देख रहे हैं कि हम धीरे धीरे चीज़ें भूल रहे हैं, हम ये देख रहे हैं कि हमें कुछ मेडिटेशन करने पे या कुछ करने पे चीज़ें याद आ जा रही हैं। जब ये सारी चीज़ें हम देखते हैं, देन डेफिनेटली there is certain something permanent that is there, and that permanence a cohesive difference है between the Vedantas and the Brahman and the Buddhism. The mental and physical phenomena are alike in this, that both are modifications of ajnana. It is indeed difficult to comprehend the nature of ajnana, though its appearance in consciousness can be perceived, and though by dialectic criticism all our most well-found notions seem to vanish away and become self-contradictory and indefinable. Vedanta explains the reason of this difficulty as due to the fact that all these indefinable forms and names can only be experienced as modes of the real and the self-luminous. Our innate error, which we continue from beginningless time, consists in this, that the real in its full complete light is ever hidden from us, and the glimpse that we get of it is always through manifestation of forms and names. These phenomenal forms and names are undefinable, incomprehensible, and unknowable in themselves. But under certain conditions, they are manifested by the self-luminous real, and at the time they are so manifested, they seem to have a positive being which is undeniable. This positive being is only the highest being, the real which appears as the being of those forms and names. The lump of clay may be molded into a plate of a cup, but the plate form or the cup form has no existence or being apart from the being of the clay. It is the being of the clay that is imposed on the diverse forms, which also then seem to have being in themselves. Our illusion thus consists of mutually misattributing the characteristics of the unreal forms, the modes of ajnana and the real being. As the illusion is the mode of all our experience and its very essence, it is indeed difficult for us to conceive of the Brahman as part of the modes of ajnana. Moreover, such is the nature of ajnanas that they are knowable only by a false identification of them with the self-luminous Brahman or Atman. Being as such is the highest truth, the Brahman. The jnana state are not a non-being in the sense of nothing of pure negation, abhava, but in the sense that they are not being. Being that is the self-luminous illuminates non-being, the jnana, and this illumination means nothing more than a false identification of being with non-being. Right? ये हम उस अज्ञान की बात कर रहे हैं जिसमें जो हमने भगवत गीता में भी पढ़ा था कि हम अपने आप को नॉन बीइंग्स यानी कि नेचर से लिंक करने लग जाते हैं, बट वी आर नेवर चेंजिंग एंड वी आर इटर्नल. The form of ajnana is if they are to be known, must be associated with pure consciousness, and this association means an illusion, superimposition, and mutual misattribution. No, but apart from the pure consciousness, these can be manifested or known, for it is pure consciousness alone that is self-luminous. Thus, when we try to know the ajnan state in themselves as apart from the Atman, we fall in a dilemma. For knowledge means illusory superimposition or illusion, and when it is not knowledge, they evidently cannot be known. Thus, apart from its being a factor in an illusory experience, no other kind of experience is known to us. If Ajnana had been a non entity altogether, it could never come at all. If it were a positive entity, then it would never cease to be. अज्ञान अगर पॉजिटिव एंटिटी होता तो इट वुड हैव नेवर सीज टू बी, लेकिन अगर नेगेटिव एंटिटी है तो वो कभी आता भी नहीं. राइट, द अज्ञान दस इज द मिस्टीरियस कैटेगरी मिड वे बिटवीन बीइंग एंड नॉन बीइंग एंड अनडिफाइनेबल इन एवरी वे. अज्ञान जो है अनडिफाइनेबल है कि अभी आता है लेकिन उसके ऊपर सॉल्व भी तो हो जाता है. एंड इट इज ऑन अकाउंट ऑफ दिस दैट इट इज कॉल्ड तत्वन्यात्वाभ्याम अनिर्वाच्य or undefinable and undeterminable either as real or unreal. It is real in the sense that it is a necessary postulate of our phenomenal experience, and unreal in its own nature, for apart from its connection with consciousness, it is incomprehensible and undefinable. Its forms, even while they are manifested in consciousness, are self-contradictory and incomprehensible as to their real nature or mutual relation, and comprehensible only so far as they are manifested in consciousness. But apart from these, no rational conception of them can be formed. Thus, it is impossible to say anything about the jnana, for no knowledge of it is possible. So, so far as and manifested in consciousness, and depending on this, the Shishtivadins asserted that our experience was inexplicable, produced under the influence of avidya, and that beyond that no objective common ground could be admitted. But though this has the general assent of Vedanta and is irrefutable in itself, still for the sake of explaining our common sense view, Prakriti Karma Vyaya Vyavastha, we may think that we have an objective world before us as the common field of experience. We can also imagine a scheme of things and operations by which the phenomena of our experience may be interpreted in the light of the Vedanta metaphysics. The subject can be conceived in the three forms. First, as the Atman, the one highest reality. Second, as the Jiva, and the Atman as the limited by its psychosis. When the psychosis is not differentiated from the Atman, but Atman is regarded as identical with the psychosis, thus appearing as a living and knowing being, as Jiva Shakshi, or perceiving consciousness, or the aspect in which the Jiva comprehends, knows, or experiences. Thirdly, the Antakaran psychosis, or the mind, which is an inner center or bundle of avidya manifestations. Thus, as the outer world objects are exterior centers of the avidya phenomena or the objective entities. The Antakaran is not only the avidya capable of supplying all forms of our present experience, but it also contains all the tendencies and modes of past experiences, impressions of experience in this life or in the past life. कई बार आपको कुछ चीज़ों से जन्म से ही डर लगने लगता है. आप पैदा होते ही जब आपने वो चीज़ पहले एक्सपीरियंस नहीं की होती है, बट स्टिल यू आर अफ्रेड ऑफ दैट एक्सपीरियंस. वो चीज़ें जो आपकी पास्ट कर्मों से चलती आ रही हैं, राइट. The Antakaran is not only the avidya capable of supplying all forms of our present experience, but it also contains all the tendencies and modes of past experience of the past impressions of experience in the life or in the past life. The Antakaran is always turning the various avidya modes of it into the Jiva Shakshi, Jiva in its aspect as illuminating mental states, and these are also immediately manifested, made known, and transformed into experience. This avidya state of the antakaran are called its vrittis or states. These avidya states of the antakaran are called its vrittis or states. The specific peculiarity of the vritti ajnanas is this, that only in these forms can they be superimposed upon pure consciousness, and thus be interpreted as states of consciousness and have their indefiniteness or cover removed. The forms of ajnana remain as indefinite and hidden or veiled only so long as they do not come into reflection to these vrittis of antakaran, for the ajnana can be destroyed by the chit only in the form of vritti, while in all other forms of ajnana veils the chit from manifestations. The removal of ajnanas, vrittis of the antakaran, or the manifestations of the vritti jnana is nothing but this, that the antakaran state of avidya are the only states of ajnana which can be superimposed upon the self-illuminous atman, adhyasa, false attribute. ये सारी चीज़ें वही हैं जो अगर आपने भगवद गीता का लाइव मेरा देखा होगा, इट इज़ बेस्ड ऑन दैट ओनली. बस इसमें जस्ट जीव को इज इन भगवद गीता इट इज़ भगवान, राइट. The objective world consists of the avidya phenomena with the self as its background. Its objectivity consists in this, that avidya in this form cannot be superimposed on the self-luminous chit but exists only as veiling the chit. These avidya phenomena may be regarded as many and diverse, but in all these forms they serve only to veil the chit and also beyond consciousness. It is only when they come in contact with avidya phenomena as antakarna state that they coalesce with the state, with the vidya state, and render themselves objects of consciousness or have their veil of avaran removed. It is thus assumed that in the ordinary perception of objects such as jag, etc., the antakaran goes out of the man's body, sharir madhyat, and comes in touch with the jag, becomes transformed into the same form. And as soon as this transformation takes place, the chit chit, which is always steadily shining, illuminates the jag form or the jag. The jag phenomena in the objective world could not be manifested, though these were taking place on the ground of the same self-luminous Brahman or Atman, or as forms of the highest truth of my subjective consciousness. Because the Ajnana phenomena in these forms serve to veil their illuminator, the self-luminous, it is also only by coming in contact with these phenomena that the Antakaran could be transformed into corresponding states, and that the illumination dawned which at once revealed the Antakaran state and the objects with which these states or vrittis had coalesced. The consciousness manifested through the vrittis alone has the power of removing the jnana, veiling the chit. Of course, there are no actual distinctions of inner and outer, or the chit within me and the chit without me. These are only of appearance and due to avidya. ये सिर्फ हमारे appearance है और सिर्फ विद्या के कारण ही ये सब होता है. And it is only from the point of view of appearance that we suppose that knowledge of objects can only dawn when the inner chit and the outer chit unite together through the antakarna vritti, which makes the external objects translucent, as it were by its own translucence, removes the ajnana which was veiling the external self-luminous chit, and reveals the object phenomena by the very union of the chit as reflected through it. And the chit is underlying the object phenomena. The prataksha prama or right knowledge, prataksha prama, right knowledge, prataksha prama, right knowledge. Right? By perception is the chit, the pure consciousness reflected through the vritti and identical with the chit as the background of the object phenomena revealed by it. From the relative point of view, we may thus distinguish three consciousness. Consciousness as the background of objective phenomena. 1. Consciousness as the background of the jeev or pramata, the individual. Third, consciousness reflected in the vritti of the antakarna. When these three unite, perception is affected. Brahma or right knowledge means in Vedanta the acquirement of such new knowledge as has not been contradicted by experience abadhita. There is thus no absolute definition of experience abadhita. There is thus no absolute definition of truth. A knowledge acquired can be said to be true only so long as it is not contradicted. Thus, the world appearance, though it is very true now, may be rendered false when this is contradicted by right knowledge of Brahman or the one reality. Thus, the knowledge of the world appearance is true now but not true absolutely. The only absolute truth is the pure consciousness which is never contradicted in any experience at any time. The truth of our world knowledge is thus to be tested by finding out whether it will be contradicted at any stage of world appearance or not. That which is not contradicted by later experience is to be regarded as true. अगर कोई knowledge है वो बाद में contradict नहीं की जाती है, that is regarded as true. For all world knowledge as a whole will be contradicted when Brahma knowledge is realized. कोई भी वर्ल्ड की जो नॉलेज होगी, जो भी सामाजिक जो ज्ञान होगा, जो भी वर्ल्डली नॉलेज होगा, वो अनट्रू कहलाएगा व्हेन ब्रह्म ज्ञान इज रियलाइज्ड, राइट. जब ब्रह्म ज्ञान आपको आ जाएगा तो सारी नॉलेज विल बी फॉल्स. The innate experience of pleasure and pain also are generated by a false identification of antakaran transformation as pleasure or pain with the self, by virtue of which are generated the perception I am happy or I am sorry. In continuous perception of anything for a certain time as an object or as pleasure, etc., the mental state of vritti is said to last in the same way all the while, so long as any other new form is not taken up by the antakaran for the acquirement of any new knowledge. In such cases, when I infer that there is fire on the hill, that I see the hill is an object of perception, for the antakaran vritti is one with it, but that there is fire in it is a matter of inference. For the antakaran vritti cannot be in touch with the fire. So in the same experience there may be two modes of mental modification. As perception is seeing the hill, and as inference in inferring the fire in the hill. In case of acquired perception, as when on seeing sandalwood, I think that it is odoriferous sandalwood, it is pure perception so far as sandalwood is concerned. It is inference or memory so far as I assert it to be odoriferous. Vedanta does not admit the existence of the relation called samavaya inherence or jati class notion, and so does not distinguish perception as a class as distinct from the other classes called inference, and holds that both perception and inference are but different modes of transformation of the antakaran reflecting the chit in the corresponding vrittis. The perception is thus nothing but the chitta manifestation in the antakaran vritti, transformed into the form of an object with which it is in contact. Perception in its objective aspect is the identity of the chit underlying the object with the subject, and perception in the subjective aspect is regarded as the identity of the subjective chit with the objective chit. The identity, of course, means that though through the vritti the same reality subsisting in the object, the subject is realized, whereas in inference the thing is to be inferred, being away from the contact with antakaran, has apparently a different reality from the manifested in the state of consciousness. Thus, perception is regarded as the mental state representing the same identical reality in the object and the subject by antakaran contact. And it is held that the knowledge produced by words, example, this is the same Devadatta, referring identically to the same thing which is seen. Example, when I see Devadatta before me, another man says this is Devadatta, and the knowledge produced by this is Devadatta through a verbal shabd knowledge is to be regarded as perception from the antyakarn vritti is the same, right? अगर हमारे सामने कोई इंसान है तो और कोई बोलता है कि हाँ ये देवदत्त है, तो दिस इज देवदत्त, ये नॉलेज परसेप्शन में आता है एंड इज टू बी रिगार्डेड एज परसेप्शन और प्रत्यक्ष, ये प्रत्यक्ष है, सामने है हमारे, राइट. The content of these words, this is Devadatta, being the same as the perception, and there being no new relating knowledge as represented in the proposition, this is Devadatta, involving the unity of two terms, this and Devadatta, with a copula, but only the indication of one whole as Devadatta under visual perception already experienced. The knowledge proceeding from this is Devadatta, is regarded as an example of Nirvikalpa knowledge. So, on the occasion of the rise of Brahma consciousness, when the perceptor instructs, Thou art Brahman, the knowledge proceeding from the sentence is not Savikalpa. For though grammatically there are two ideas and a copula, yet from the point of view of intrinsic significance, tatparya, one identical reality only is indicated. Vedanta does not distinguish nirvikalpa and savikalpa in visual perception, but only in shabda perception, as in case referred to above. In all such cases, the condition for nirvikalpa is that the notion conveyed by the sentence should be one whole or one identical reality. Whereas in savikalpa perception, we have a combination of different ideas, as in the sentence, the king's name is coming, Rajpurusha agacchati. Here no identical reality is signified, but what is signified is the combination of two or three different concepts. It is not out of place to mention in this connection that Vedanta admits all the six pramanas of Kumarila and considers this Mimamsa that like Mimamsa that all knowledge is self-valid, Svata Pramana. But Prama has not the same meaning in Vedanta as in Mimamsa. There as we remember, Prama meant the knowledge which guided one to practical action, and as such all knowledge was Prama, until practical experience showed the course of action in accordance with which it was found to be contradicted. In Vedanta, however, there is no reference to action, but Prama means only uncontradicted cognition. To the definition of self-validity as given by Mimamsa Vedanta adds another objective qualification such as knowledge can have Swata Pramanya, as is not vitiated by the presence of any dosha, cause of error such as defect of senses or the like. The Vedanta, of course, does not think like Nyaya, that positive condition, example, correspondence, etc., are necessary for the validity of knowledge, nor does it divest knowledge of all qualifications, like the Mimamsis, for whom all knowledge is self-valid as such. It adopts a middle course and holds that absence of doshas is a necessary condition for the self-validity of knowledge. It is clear that this is a compromise for whenever an external condition has to be admitted and knowledge cannot be regarded as self-valid. But Vedanta says that as it requires only a negative condition for the absence of dosha, the objection does not apply to it, and it holds that if it depended on the presence of any positive condition for proving the validity of knowledge like the Nyaya, then only its theory of self-validity would have been damaged. But since it wants to only the negative condition, no blame can be attributed to its theory of self-validity. Vedanta was bound to follow this slippery middle course, for it could not say that the pure chit reflected in the consciousness could require anything else for establishing its validity, nor could it say that all phenomenal forms of knowledge were also all valid, for then the world appearance would come to be valid. So it held that knowledge could be regarded as valid only when there is no dosha present. Thus, from the absolute point of view, all world knowledge was false and had no validity, because there was the avidya dosha, and in the ordinary sphere also the knowledge was valid in which there was no dosha. Validity pramanya with mimamsa meant the capacity that knowledge has to guide us to practical action in appearance with it. But with Vedanta, it meant correctness of fact and want of contradiction. The absence of dosha being guaranteed, there is nothing which can vitiate the correctness of the knowledge. ये वेदांता परिभाषा शिखामणि एंड मणि प्रभा एंड चित्सुखा ऑन स्वतः प्रामाण्य का में से लिया गया है. इसमें बस ये बोला गया है कि जो भी हम नॉलेज लेते हैं वो प्रॉपर नॉलेज तभी अगर उसमें विद्या नहीं है, उसमें अगर कोई दोष नहीं है. लेकिन जो संसारिक ज्ञान है उसमें तो दोष है ही है. लेकिन जो हमारे जो वेद हैं, वेदांतास है, उपनिषद हैं, उसमें कोई दोष नहीं, क्योंकि वो स्वतः भगवान ने ही बोली गई है. जैसे भगवद गीता स्वतः भगवान ने ही बोला गया है. और आप अगर उसकी रचना देखेंगे तो उसके इसमें आप देखेंगे कि जो डाउट एक नॉर्मल इंसान के मन में आता है वही डाउट जस्ट नेक्स्ट श्लोक में एक्सप्लेन किया गया है. राइट, दिस फिनिशेस अप विद द वेदांता फिलोसफी का जो था, बट उसके बाद वेदांता थ्योरी ऑफ इल्यूजन बचा है. I think in the next class we can finish it. In the next class we will be able to finish the Vedanta philosophy. This is the only book that was left with me. Rest 4 books will be continued in November, and in between we will be continuing with some other philosophies, not through the book but definitely through other websites. Hope you like this video. If you like this video, please kindly like, share and subscribe my channel. Jai Shri Ram.